In this lecture, Professor A.K. Enamelhaq explains the importance of supply-side economic policy for Bangladesh for the business students.
What is supply-side policy? Supply-side policy means strategies to increase supply. What is increasing supply? What does it mean? Increasing supply means we should invest. Remember, we have to invest in such a way that it is not a demand side issue, it's more of a supply side issue. So I'll give you a difference between demand side and the supply side issue. When I beautify Dhaka city, and that is something one of the government in Bangladesh did. So we spent 900 crore to beautify Dhaka city. So when we spend 900 crore to beautify Dhaka city, is it a demand side or supply side?
Sir, demand side.
Demand. So realize the problem that we actually, this is the demand side. On the other hand, let's look at the Padma Bridge. Supply side or demand side? It's the supply side. Why? Because it will reduce cost. And if it reduces cost, supply will shift down. So we realize we should cleverly target our economy. So let's say that we have a traffic jam in Dhaka city. Take an example, very good example. We have a traffic jam in Dhaka city. So we have two policies. One policy, reduce car. Another policy, improve city bus service. So think about it. Which one is demand side? Reduce car. Is it supply side or demand side?
Demand side.
Demand side.
Demand side. That is what even Mohit was trying to do. Answer is, why looking at this one? Why don't you look at this one? Our biggest problem is people are waiting in traffic for 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day. Not because they like it, but because they have to go. They have to move from place A to place B. If they don't move, they don't have income. That's their job. So if I reduce car, but do not improve the bus service, all I'm going to do, I'm going to cut on this, demand. But yes, cutting demand looks like fantastic, but you're cutting demand means you're cutting economic growth. So we have a biggest problem in our history because a lot of people, and I've seen many people, always talk about, without knowing what is demand and what is supply, they talk about demand side because it is written in the textbook. And we always believe in the Bible. We always believe that whatever is written in the book is very good. I don't have to think about it. That's how I say always memorization in education. Because if you memorize, you never think about it. That if I look at Bangladesh, our biggest problem is supply side. Our biggest problem is we don't have enough roads. If we look into the road, very simple example, if you do road networks in Bangladesh, for the last 20 years, not even 100 kilometers of road was made. Whereas in the last 20 years, we have significant increase in population. So country like Bangladesh, we have not increased even 100-kilometer road. In the last 20 years or even 50 years, we have not made 1 kilometer of railway, whereas population has increased. In the last 50 years, we have not even increased one new railway station in a new place because density of population has changed. So we do not understand the difference between demand and supply. And I always feel pity that we don't understand this basic fundamental difference, that if you look into the economy and if you understand Bangladesh economy, then the idea is very simple. Look at the functions and look at the demand function, aggregate demand is shifting. All you have to do, shift aggregate supply. And if you shift aggregate supply, you move from point A, not to point B, but to point C. And if you go to point C, if this is, for example, if this is already 7% economic growth, if I could move to this one, it will be 10% economic growth. That's exactly what Chinese did between 1980s and 90s. So what the Chinese did, so see, we do not learn from the China, we always learn from the West because we don't understand that our closest learning partner is Chinese. What is the difference between these two? What China did in the 80s and 90s, they have increased their highway. So they said, okay, roads have to go up. So when they have increased their highway, it increasingly increased supply. All the economy is linked. This is something in Bangladesh we have done also in the 90s. And the person who did it is really somebody that we know don't like, was President Ershad. The person who really did the whole thing, connecting the whole country with the roads, local governments, remember LGRD was established, connected the whole Bangladesh, created the markets for the whole people, connected the markets within Bangladesh, was him. And he actually increased, not only this, he's the only president in the Bangladesh who spends so much time to create intercity train. Today's intercity train that you see was all done by him. He said, look, we have to increase number of trains. Fast moving train. Now, fast moving is not as fast as Americans or in all where our American train speed is same, not Europeans or Chinese. But intercity train was his discovery. And after he's left, he has left many years ago. We have not introduced a single new train between cities in Bangladesh, whereas population has gone up. So it's very interesting when you look into this that most of the other governments did not do it. They did not understand the difference between demand and supply. So this is what happens. Similarly, if I look at economic growth of Bangladesh, if I look into this story, remember today's garments industry, ready-made garments industry, the largest, it is 84% of our export is RMG. The rest of the Bangladesh only exports 16%, nothing more than that. So this is RMG, this is the rest. So if you, what are in the rest? If you say jute, if you say tea, if you say leather, if you say ceramic, if you say medicine, pharmaceutical, doesn't matter what you say, the rest is only 16%. If you say computer, IT, we're saying a lot of things. Remember all these. That's not only 16% of the economy. Only one sector occupies 84% of our export. And how was it created? It was created by Korea.
The European countries?
No. It was created by United States and Sri Lanka. This is what the problem of Bangladesh when we don't understand analyze it. Yes, we are selling to Europe, we are selling to United States, but it was actually created by United States because United States in the 80s, remember this was the 80s, and I'm giving you 80s as a very good idea. In the 80s, United States already predicted that China is going to be the major player. What we are thinking today, in the 80s, United States always thought that, look, we cannot stop China, it's coming. Because the China is coming, it's like the morals of Bangladesh. They realize that, oh, this fellow, if he lives, he's going to challenge me, kill him. So they first thought, okay, we need to create, which is called quota. Because China was exporting too much to United States. So United States thought, just like Trump thought, to restrict China. So they wanted to restrict China. See, when they started it. So they wanted to restrict China and they introduced garments quota. Garments quota means no country should export more than a quota. So they have given a quota to every country. And they have fixed quota for every country. And it was Korea who found out that in 6 months they fulfilled their quota. So when Korea found out the 6 months they have fulfilled their quota, but they still have another 6 months to export, what do? How do you export when you don't have a quota? And America said, if you now export anything more, we are going to impose more tariff. Now, it was Korea was a friend, but unfortunately the quota affected Korea first. So Korea realized that because I need to export this much. but I have finished my quota. I cannot export this. So how do I export it? So another was, maybe I should export is from using the quota of another country. And then it was the Sri Lanka was the target. So they said, okay, Sri Lanka is also a good producer. However, they have unfulfilled quota. They did not export this much. So Korea said, I'm going to go to Sri Lanka, invest in their garments industry and export from Sri Lanka because I have the market connections. Remember, market connections are very important for businessmen. So I have market links. I know the big producers in America, big buyers. So I can tell my buyers that I have a factory in Sri Lanka and I'm going to export from Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka has quota, not used quota. Sri Lankan quota was unused. So since Sri Lankan quota was unused, Korean investor decided to invest into Sri Lanka and export their product from Sri Lanka to United States. That was their idea. Now, when they are planning this, we have another good friend. This is our another friend. Heard about them? Who are they?
Terrorist organizations.
Terror. Oh, you are saying terrorist. I'm saying friend. So it was Tamil Tigers who started a war in Sri Lanka. And that stopped Korean that we should not go there. So they said what to do. So they found out another country which is called Bangladesh. And they said Bangladesh also has quota but never used. So they came to Bangladesh and they said, look, you have also quota, you are not using it. Why don't I invest in your industry? And I bring Sri Lankan experts. Remember, Sri Lanka has also garments, what you call cutting and other tailoring experts. So they said, I'm going to designers coming from Sri Lanka because they are very good in it. I could have done to Sri Lanka, but Tamil has created the problems. So they diverted their investment to Bangladesh. That is how Bangladesh RMG was created. It was not an accident. It was it was the way it worked. And it was not easy because when you come and want to export from Bangladesh, there is a business risk. So how do you look into business risk? So you have to think about carefully that, okay, what does it mean business risk? Means business is like this. Okay, so what I was saying basically, because of remember the quota, garments quota was imposed, American imposed market quota. They are behind the scene, their idea was China actually, because they understood the Chinese are occupying the market. And since Chinese are occupying the market, so we need to stop China. But they cannot say, I want to stop China. That's not internationally favorable. They didn't want to say that. So they said, maybe we should impose a quota. And once with the quota imposed, which means China cannot export more than this volume, which means they are effectively, they cannot grow more than that. That's what they have imposed. But the biggest problem was Korea, because Korea finished their export within 6 months, their quota. So if Korea wanted to export more than 6 months, Korea was supposed to be taxed but then Korea said, oh, I have the link. So I may find out in countries where there is no investment in garments industry, but they have quota. Sri Lanka had quota, Bangladesh had quota, Pakistan had quota. Now Pakistan, and we have another friend also in Pakistan technically, because Pakistan was suffering from Taliban's Afghanistan war. Nobody wanted to go to Pakistan. So they said, okay, if Sri Lanka is a better country, they are particularly technical people better there. So they said, we should invest in Sri Lanka and export from Korean, using their market links, will invest in Sri Lanka and export from Sri Lanka. So that's how it was designed. But then Tamil started the war. And Koreans said, no, I cannot go to Sri Lanka. I'm going to go Bangladesh. That's how Bangladesh became a choice. And then they asked Bangladesh. In fact, Ershad went to President. They invited Ershad to Korea. And they asked him that we are ready to invest in Bangladesh. We have a garments quota finished, but we have the market connections. We can give you the market. Will you agree? So Ershad got the idea. He came back to Bangladesh. He has a finance minister named Mohit. Same finance minister. So he was
Yes,
at
sir.
that time. Yeah, he was the finance minister of Ershad. So he asked Mohit that we need a policy. We need to design a policy to Greece to create this market. Sri Lankan were allowed to come to Bangladesh as a technician. So that's how we see in garments industry in Bangladesh, Sri Lankan dominance still there. So Sri Lanka was starting from the starting, Sri Lanka came to Bangladesh on the garments. But the problem is this, if you want to export, you have a buyer which is living in United States. You have a contractor who is living in Korea, and you have a producer who is living in Bangladesh. So how do you manage this? Now, let's take an example. If a buyer gives $1 million order, the order is placed through this buying house to a producer in Bangladesh. So the order travels like this. It goes through there, the mediator comes to Bangladesh, and $1 million order. Question is, if $1 million order comes, how do you going to produce it? Because you need to supply it, and there is a day, let's say 90 days. So they give an order with a date marks that on this day, if you put it on a ship, only then you'll get the delivery. So 90 days is the time limit from the order. This is 0, this is 90. Now, between 90 days, you have to produce it, which means producers in Bangladesh need to complete input buying. So you have to buy input, which means import. So we have to import products from abroad based on an order, which is nothing but a piece of paper. Now, our banks are not ready to say, on a piece of paper, I will give you a loan. So it was Mohit, I must say, who then created what is now you see bonded warehouse. So this bonded warehouse rule that you see now was created at that time. So Bangladesh government was ready, and this is why I credit Ershad, because he was the person who thought about it. Okay? So he created bonded warehouse under which once the order is placed, there is a bank in United States, corresponding bank, and there is a bank of a producer. Remember, there is also a supplier in Bangladesh who has also a bank. So suppliers bank in Bangladesh, and these two banks get into a confirmation letter of agreements. What is the letter of agreement? That I have money from this buyer against this order. The money is now held up with the bank. This bank gets a confirmation that, okay, you have the money, agree with the Bangladeshi producer that you produce it, but I will give you a loan. $1 million order, maybe 80% is production cost. In fact, that time it was 90%. So I need about $900 million technically loan because I need to produce this product for 90 days. And once you ship it here, the bank will get the shipment document and ask this bank, transfer the money to me. So that's how this whole bonded warehouse comes. And the bank, remember, once the import comes, it all comes to the bank because bank is in the middle. That's how the bonded warehouse concept created. It was created by Mohit in a way. And we actually created all these garments export. So if you look into our biggest export of garment that we have done, it was an innovation. And this was a supply side innovation. The reason I'm explaining this is supply side innovation. They created rules, and the rule has increased our supply. So we actually created ability to increase our supply through certain, and these are in a way fiscal policies. That's what I'm giving you the idea that when you have ideas, you have to think about demand versus supply. That what type of policies will increase supply versus what type of policies will increase demand. And for Bangladesh, we actually need nothing but supply side policy. How would you increase supply? So instead of beautifying road, increase the mileage because that's important. Increase the number of lanes. because that is more important. Why you need those? Because if you do not increase these lanes, the traffic will be halted. So I'm giving you the logic of economic movement, and this is where you need a fiscal policies. Fiscal policies. So what are the fiscal policies? One of the instruments of the fiscal policies is the budget document. So budget document is a fiscal policy document. What the budget document tells you? Budget document tells you what the government is going to do in the next 1 year. Which product they're going to impose taxes, which product they do not want to release taxes, reduce taxes, so that investors can choose those products and say, okay, this is what I will. For example, one of the best budget document, policy that, for example, Saifur Rahman did. So when he was the finance minister, he actually, in one budget in 1991 or 92, he said that I'm going to increase custom duty on powder milk, import of powder milk. And he said, this I'm going to do for next 3 years. So he actually gave a line that for the next 3 years, every year, I'm going to increase the import duty. And the moment he did it, within 3 years, milk production in Bangladesh went up. Because the milk producer understood that instead of importing powder milk, I better import Australian cows. It's cheaper. So you see, one simple policy significantly contributed to the increase of milk. A generation today, like most of you probably, can drink milk. But a generation earlier, milk was almost like an impossible product. Unless you have your own cows, you could not buy milk. But today, you don't worry about it. You just, okay, go to the shop and buy milk. So see, the biggest change that has happened was done by a simple policy. The budget document is a very good document where the government create policies. Unfortunately, majority of the budget finance ministers, and still today, it is true, did not understand the supply side issue of the budget. They actually understood the demand side issue of the budget. What is the difference between demand side issue of the budget? That you say on July 1, I will impose 100% tax on, let's say, on car. So what does it mean? You are telling people that after July 1, you should not buy car. So it's a demand side policy. On the other hand, you could have said this way, that from this year, let's say 2022, I will impose tax on car. What does it mean? It means investors will think today in 2020 that I have 2 years to think about what to do. So instead of importing car, I will maybe assemble car in Bangladesh. See how strategy changes. But if you tell on June 30, June 3, let's say June 3rd, you give a budget and you said on July 1st, I'm going to impose taxes. It's a garbage. It's basically telling people, reduce your demand. But if you want to give a supply side incentive, you have to design a fiscal policy with time in there. Because supplier needs time to respond. Some supplier needs 5 years to respond. Some supply, think about this simple issue, that if you want to even make one simple thing, it's not a mudi dukan, that tomorrow morning I'm going to introduce a new shop. You need a time to do this. And we did not think about it. So remember that a lot of time is the fiscal policies that matters. Unfortunately, most of our budget document, we pass the budget on June 30, and on July 1, price of the product goes up. So our newspaper started writing, because of the budget, prices going up. No other country in the world have this kind of budgeting. Because why? Because of the budget, price should go up. Budget has nothing to do to increase prices of a commodity. Budget is supposed to create incentive for producers and consumers to change their behavior. Same thing. So if you go back, if you go another country, you find out the budget comes and goes. Nobody knows about which price is going up, which price is going down, because they never declare a tax for the next 5 days. You pass a budget on June 30 and you start imposing a tax on July 1, that's a stupidity. Whom you are punishing? You are punishing none. Why? Because businessmen started realizing that, wait a minute, government is going to impose new taxes on June, and today is March. So I have to import before July 1st. Before July 1st, I need to import. Why? Because there will be new taxes. But I don't know what are the product government is going to impose taxes. So what should I do? I should invite the finance minister in different forum and let him speak. So that is why from March 1, you'll find out finance minister of Bangladesh starts talking. He is always invited. And some finance minister, starting from Saifur Rahman to Mohit, loves it. So they started talking and talking. And sometimes they, by mistake, tell some story that this product I'm going to impose tax. Well, that's exactly what the businessman was looking for. From March till June, the finance minister should stop talking, because you are going to, by mistake, you are going to tell that this product I'm going to import taxes. The moment you say this, they're going to import it before July 1st so that they can make money out of it. The amount of money they make in only one day is quite big, just because of the mistake. So nowhere in the world you will find out finance minister actually goes in public. Biggest example that I tell you, do you know who is the foreign minister of United States? But you will never see finance minister of United States. Nobody knows his name. People know Kissinger's name. People know everybody's name, but nobody knows the finance minister's name, because finance ministers around the world are always very shy. They normally remain very shy, and primarily because they understand that if I am the finance minister, if I speak, I will tell stories that people want to know. That's exactly why they invite me. So if I tell too much story, I will tell which tax I'm going to increase. And if I tell them which tax I'm going to increase, there are windfall gains that businessmen can make. Unfortunately, in Bangladesh, businessmen, I think they're rational. They invite finance minister starting from end of February to March. Till June, they ask him, come and talk about everything. And our finance ministers enjoys it. Saifur Rahman enjoyed it, Mohit was enjoying it. And they feel they're proud that people are talking. The answer is, people are talking to them to get secrets. They should have, just like the finance minister of everyone in the world, they always remain shy. They don't want to talk because they know what they're going to do. But they don't want to tell anyone what they're going to do. Economic theory has discussed rational expectation. And we realize that if people can predict, government policies will lose its effectiveness. So finance ministers across the world do not speak. You will see that they do not speak. But unfortunately, I have been always telling that it's the stupidity of the finance minister. When finance ministers say these are stupidity, rubbish, in fact, they themselves are stupid and rubbish. Because you do not talk. You are going to control the economy. It is you who is like a super minister and telling this is what I'm going to do. Remember, the only finance minister is the only finance minister who makes money, who talk about revenue or income of the government. The rest of the ministers are expenditure minister, right or wrong? Every other minister spend money.
They approve the spending.
Yeah, they spend the money. Their job is nothing but spending money. So if you ask the road minister what is his job, Fita kata his job. Spend money on projects. But where the money is coming from is the finance minister's job, to find the money. So remember the difference between finance ministers and other ministers. Every other minister is doing only one thing, spending money. It is the finance minister's job is to ensure that the money is available. So while every other minister is very great minister means they are spending money. Finance minister is the worst minister because he's cutting your pockets. He's talking to people. He's trying to find out from where I can get additional money. For example, you have realized that all of a sudden remember this year, government has doubled the tax on car, right? Nobody noticed it. But anyone owning a car all of a sudden realize that all of my expenditure has doubled because government has increased the tax on car. Finance minister is looking for avenues from where I can collect money. So he normally do not speak across the world, but only in South Asia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, they speak. They enjoy talking. So talking ministers are not finance ministers. So, and as I said, this is why I mentioned that they don't understand what their job is. Their job is to cut pockets. Their job is to tell the government, I'm going to collect resources. But at the same time, their job is to lubricate the economy. When I say lubricate the economy is not moving. You have to push the economy forward. And the biggest advantage of Bangladesh to push the economy forward is push the supply function. That's the only thing you have to do because we have a shortage. This is a shortage economy, not a surplus economy. We want to produce, we don't have phone. We want to produce, we don't have electricity. So the finance minister's only job is to find out how do I increase supply. Now supply I increase by myself, or I can create policies so investors can invest. That is why businessman looks at the finance minister document and say, is he trying to tell me where to invest? That's why so budget document is a very good document. Remember PPP, private-public partnership projects. What is a private-public partnership projects? Government is talking about and saying, look, I want to make a road between Dhaka to Chittagong. I cannot do it because it's too costly. I'm asking you, a company XYZ, said, why don't you invest in this road? I will give you the land. So what they do, they say, I'm giving the land. If I give you the land, let's say 30% equity money, you spend 70%. You invest 70%. I don't invest because I don't have to collect taxes. But if you invest 70%, you earn income out of it because it's a toll road. But I also earn money because I will impose taxes on you. That is one strategy, PPP. Alternative strategy, I spend all 100% and I collect taxes on people and say, give me the money because I need to spend in large projects. There is a choice how to create your policies. And a lot of countries are now realizing that it is very difficult for the government to raise tax money. Example I have mentioned, if you look into Bangladesh, $320 billion. No, not $20 billion. How much is it? Yes, $320 billion. $20 billion. If you look into the budget of GDP of Bangladesh, this is the GDP. C plus I plus G plus X minus M. The government is only here. And how much is this one? 5%. So by spending only 5% money, remember budget is 15%. 10% is salary. So how much real money I spend in the economy is nothing but 5%. So government spend only 5% money. Do you expect the government of Bangladesh using 5% of the money? And even when they spend 5%, they have a deficit budget. What is the deficit budget? The revenue is less than the expenditure. So when by spending 5%, the government of Bangladesh is always finding it difficult to finance project. Can they go into large project? Answer is no, it will be very difficult for them. That's why their PPP has been started. The government will say, look, I'm going to give you land, but you do the rest, which means without spending any money, I will earn income. This policy is basically simple. Without spending any money, I will earn income. Why without spending money? Because 30% is road, land is already mine. And I'm telling you, you build the road and make it a toll road. That's how the projects has come. Now government will say, how about the poor people? So they will create rules that if you are using the road, certain people may be free. So that's what the government create rules. So government will create rules and say, look, find out what is the best way to invest. That's how PPP is supposed to be done. If I make a power plant, every 100 megawatt power plant requires a large investment. So government says, no, I don't want to do it. I will rather ask you to do it. You sell the power. In case of Bangladesh, we sell the power. Government did it. But in many cases, they will say, you sell the power, you invest. So it is a way. So if you look into the whole macroeconomy, it's also a deficit budget. Remember, the deficit budget means tax is less than government. Is also an opportunity for businessmen. That's why you find out in Bangladesh right now, all the Chinese companies are here, because deficit budget means government cannot pay for all. The government is going to borrow money. So from where they're going to borrow money? If you borrow from India, Indian businessmen will enter. If you borrow from China, Chinese businessmen will. If you borrow from America, United States businessmen will enter. Very simple. It's the same rule. I was in a project with USAID. And the very interesting point, when I was in a project with the USAID, the person who was supposed to travel from America to Bangladesh, he was only allowed to travel by an American Airlines. Because American government says, no, if you are going to Bangladesh on my project, you should use American Airlines. That's why you find out on a British JICA, let's say in a British project, you'll find out British cars are run. Right? So a lot of time people talk about all this anti-Chinese and anti-Indian feeling. And but watch carefully that if there is a British coming to Bangladesh, a British foreign aid company, you'll find out they will purchase Land Rover. The reason they will use Land Rover is not that it's the cheapest, but it is made in British. So that's what they do. That's how. So unfortunately nowadays we have all this because the Chinese are investing more. That's why you see a lot of Chinese. But it used to be British. It is used to be American. That's how this was done. If it is in right, and only when it is World Bank and ADB, the rules are different. In World Bank and ADB, the rules are that it has to be the lowest price. And the lowest price in most cases are either China or India. So that's why even on that, America is not very happy. They said the lowest price rule is not very good rule because we lose the money. We are the financier, but we don't get the contract. So I remember there was a power plant in Bangladesh. Japanese was using JICA money. So they gave the JICA money to Bangladesh government. And the JICA money was spent on remodernizing a power plant, Bangladesh government power plant. And the money went to Germany. This is the difference between Japanese and others. Why Germany? Because the contract was got by the Germans. Germans are very good in electricity. They got the contract. So Japanese understood that, look, even though it's my money, but it's not coming. This is how the difference between Japanese and many others. Japanese are much more sober on that compared to others. Now I'm not against one of them, but I'm just giving you that instead of making an aim or thinking that maybe this is the Chinese problem, this is an Indian problem, why on an Indian contractor comes? Answer is that's how they have designed it. On a bilateral contract, that is how it is designed. If the Chinese give you a bilateral loan, they will say, look, I want the contract to be done by the Chinese. If an Indian gives a bilateral loan, it's the Indian government will always ensure that it is Indian. The same thing, I remember there was an Indian consultant came on a project, Indian finance project. He had to travel by Indian Airlines. Cannot even use Bangladeshi Airlines. They said, no, you cannot do this. Okay, there are lots of criticism in the history, but that's not a point for us business students. But our business student point is, if there is a government in trouble, it is also an opportunity for others. So businessmen always think about opportunities and say, okay, I can see if the government cannot provide electricity, I'm going to produce electricity, it will come to me. That's how PPP starts. So I'm not saying that the problems are not opportunities. Problems are also a kind of opportunities. My point so far has been that government should use fiscal policy to increase capacity of production. That is the most important idea. That I want to invest in such a way that economy's productive capacity goes up. And if economy's productive capacity goes up, remember, supply curve shifts. That's a supply side policy. Instead of beautification, and I'm not against beautification, but you should spend that. If I'm spending 900 crore taka in Dhaka city beautification, how many new lanes I have created? Answer was zero. That's a stupidity. And I'm against all this kind of investment if it does not create, because we should always think about supply side policy in Bangladesh. That is our biggest problem. Demand side, we don't have to worry about it. Demand, God is taking care of it. As long as we have poor people and it is reducing, more people are buying things. As long as the population growth rate right now is 1.38% growth rate, and until close to 2050, population growth rate will by 2050 it will be 0%. So after this, our economy will also run like this, because by that time we'll finish poverty. Poverty will be gone very soon. Another 10 to 15 years, there will be no poor people left. So, which means if I look into the sea, remember the sea was going up because of poverty reduction. That avenue is going to be gone in another 10 to 15 years. Population growth rate, that avenue will be gone by another 30 years. And then remittance, that avenue will be gone too. What you see remittance, I don't know whether you know the story of remittance. No. So see, this is also, and this was actually done by Zia, President Zia. So see, actually different, that's how the people have a legendary contribution. And the idea was, Zia was very simple, because what happens historically when Bangladesh was born, Bangladesh was not as friendly with Americans. That's how 74 famine came, because Americans were not ready to give us rice. Bangladesh was not recognized by the Saudis. Bangladesh was not recognized by the Chinese. So we had a big trouble. That's how 1974 came. So in that time, Bangladesh also could not export. We didn't have a lot of exportable products. Only tea was our major products. Jute was the other one, was falling. That's it. We don't have leather was the other one. So realize we didn't have a lot of products. When we don't have a lot of products to export, volume-wise, value-wise, but we have a lot of import. Fuel, we have to import. Food, we have to import. So remember, with fuel and food we're importing, we have a problem because we have to pay for it. So how should we pay for it? That was our biggest trouble. And in 1974, all of a sudden, oil price went up. And it went up within a month from $2 per barrel to $22 per barrel. You can see how much increase has done in 1 month. That was in 1974. So when in 1974, oil price went up from $2 to $22, and fuel price, food, and we are importing food and fuel, Bangladesh was in a big, big trouble. Because neither Saudi Arabia recognized us, nor Americans was giving us food. So we had to buy food, and government was now, right now, for example, you've seen the rice market in crisis, and government of Bangladesh said, I'm going to import food. See, immediately government is smart to create a decision because they have the money. But that time we didn't have the money. We didn't have the foreign exchange reserve. So Bangladesh government at that particular time, so when the oil price was creating all this trouble, Bangladesh was having hard time. So IMF came to Bangladesh and they said, we'll give you loan, but we need a guarantee. How do you pay back the loan? Because it's a dollar loan. And you don't have exportable products. If you don't have an exportable products, how do you pay for it? Because if you want food and fuel, you need dollars. It was Kuwait. It was Kuwait who gave Bangladesh a guarantee. So Kuwait told the IMF that, look, I have enough money in my reserve. If Bangladesh fails, I will pay. Give Bangladesh the loan. So you should understand the history a little bit and see how economic and political history linked to the growth of Bangladesh. So Kuwait said this is the best strategy because this is a Muslim country in trouble. So they asked IMF, look, I will give you a guarantee. They understood that if we give the guarantee, remember, if the Bangladesh cannot export many products, they have to, Kuwait is going to lose the money because Kuwait gave the guarantee to Bangladesh. IMF was happy giving money to Bangladesh. Remember, IMF is funded by United States and Europe, so they don't want to lose their money. So when Kuwait gave the guarantee, they asked the government, it was Zia's government, if I remember, that how do you pay? And I believe they invited him, just like Korean. They said, how do you pay? And obviously Zia was looking for an avenue. They said, why don't you do a small thing? What? Said, I need a lot of people to reconstruct Kuwait. So I will give you a special deal that I will bring people from your country on a preferential basis. And these people will give you dollars. So you don't have to worry about your export payment. So Bangladesh got the first, almost like a leverage, and said, okay, this is a very good idea. And Kuwait persuaded Saudi Arabia that why don't you allow this same thing to Bangladesh? So that's how Saudi Arabia, the whole Middle Eastern country, opened up and allowed Bangladesh to send manpower to their, because these countries were now growing with huge construction that you see today are all in the 80s and 70s and 80s. So they said, we need a lot of people. And since we are going to hire people from any country anyway, and since Bangladesh is in trouble, so let us bring people from Bangladesh. And that is how the manpower business started. Okay, so realize that how the whole world has moved. This is how political history. But it also gave new businesses for Bangladesh. The whole manpower business that never thought about it started. So remember, crises also create businesses. But I'm also giving you the idea that historically, that's how Kuwait became a good friend. And that is why it was a good job for the government of Bangladesh to help Kuwait when they were in trouble. It was almost like a payback. Right? Unfortunately, as the government changes, we never understood the history. We never realized that who did. Everyone did as some so that's how and then after Kuwait, Malaysia was growing. Remember, Malaysia also started growing with the Petronas, with petrol. When petrol price created Malaysian new wealth. And Malaysia was also looking for construction people. And they also thought, why don't I take it from Bangladesh? Because Bangladesh is a Muslim country. So some of the preferential arrangement that we created in the time was actually in favor of Bangladesh. And that is how manpower business has become a stronger input now in terms of this. But the reason I'm saying we don't expect manpower business to last very long. And I have a reason behind it. Why am I saying it? Because the more we go into the future, skill becomes more important than unskilled. So they're going to say, we need skilled manpower to be exported. Because if I run a machine, every machine has an instruction sheet. And we need someone to use the machine with instructions. Even kitchens are now becoming automated. A lot of gadgets in the kitchen. So if you send someone to cook in Saudi Arabia, cannot use the kitchen gadgets, it is not useful. They're not going to bring these people. And unfortunately, our average skill level is very low. Our industries, and this is one reason I've always mentioned about it. I said, look, when Bangladesh is looking for a driver, and we say driver needs class 8, I still find it amusing. Because I don't know why a class 8 is required for driving. Where on earth, up to class 8, they teach driving? Is there a syllabus on driving up to class 8?
No, sir.
So why you need class 8? What is the reason to impose this restriction? Why am I saying it? Because if you start looking at, on average, only 14% people in Bangladesh has finished class of the total population, adult population. If 14% of the total adult population finish class 5 and about 9% finish class 8, watch carefully. And if you're asking class 8 people to become, and I give you another reason, 6% finish SS. And 1% finish, about 2% finish bachelor. That's our current human skill. And if we're asking people to become class 8 as driver, what is left for my industry?
No.
Inia, can you mute? Yes. Okay. So when you are looking at it, you realize that we have 9% only about class 8. What is the point of asking them to become driver? Why I need a driver? Because drivers around the world do not need any education. They are using science. Remember, globally, science of the roads are designed without education. Because when a driver drives from Russia to Germany, so do you expect a driver to become also German expert? Answer is no. Germany to Italy, Italy to, they are all traveling across the world. Drivers do not need an education. Driver needs to know how to drive and how to use the science. Because science are designed for global non-educated people. And understanding is that if I'm going and driving in Russia, do I need to have a class 8 certificate of Russian to drive in, get a certificate in Russia? Answer is no. All the lane science is designed for people with no formal education. And the drivers without education is as good as driver with education. In Bangladesh, go to Jahangir Gate, go to the cantonment, you find out all the drivers drive well. Whether it's class 8 or class 2 or no education, right? Within cantonments, every driver knows how to drive. Every driver knows what are the signals. So I actually find it idiotic sometimes that people are talking about class 8 to be a requirement for driver, as if in class 8 we teach how to drive. If we, how many signs on the road? Dhaka, Narayanganj, 60 kilometers, that's it. You need class 8 to read that? What do you think?
No, sir.
But have you seen people explaining this? They are saying, no, we need class 8. I have seen all this literate and senior people in Bangladesh fighting for class 8. And I still do not understand, because they did not ask their own driver, what is his education? Answer is drivers do not need education. They need to have a full capacity to understand science. And class 8 has nothing to do with it. Now, the reason I'm saying it, because look at the skill level. If that is a bad skill level, then you are not going to export many manpower in future. because you need a higher skill. Our industries, remember, we are now 31% manufacturing production. Industrial production also started requiring more skill, starting from garments industry. Because the more machines are coming, you need skill, which means your demand for educated labor will go up. So my point is that in another 20 to 30 years, we will also lose all the remittance. The people who are being exported now, who are going abroad to do something else, nobody will hire them. Even in construction work, there's a lot of machines coming. So if you start looking into it, you should invest on the supply side. And if you cannot invest on the supply side, you have a problem. That's why we expect fiscal policies of the government every year to explain that, look, I need to design policies how to create skilled manpower. Invest in education. That's a supply side policy. Invest in research and development. That's a supply side policy. Invest in more road capacity. That's a supply side policy. Invest in transport capacity, supply side policy. So remember, supply side policies are very important in Bangladesh than demand side policy. But the point that I'm raising, most of the time we were pushing into the supply side, demand side policies, and most of the budget documents are designed for demand side. I have been pushing all the time that get out of this vicious circle, go to the supply side, because that's how Bangladesh economy can move faster. The second point I want to bring is the monetary policy. What is monetary policy? So now some economists in the past thought monetary policy is very simple. Monetary policy is mostly linked with the central bank. Central bank, what they can do? They can change the interest rate. Now, when they change the interest rate, how does it affect the economy? Some people say, no, it does not really affect the economy. But some people will say it affects the economy. The best example that I give is a very interesting one. President Ershad, again, I come back to these old people. President Ershad created a rule and they said, if you produce spices in your agricultural land, you will get interest rate of 2% interest rate. That was before 1990. Nobody had actually used this loan because banks are saying that, look, I keep my deposit at 6% or 7%. How can I give a loan at 2%? Government declared the rule, but nothing happened. Because there is a difference, minimum, remember 6% plus another 3. So that's about 9% service charge. So 9% is my cost of money. And if I give loan to an agricultural producer, it is 2%. So who is going to give me the 7% difference? There's a minimum 7% somebody has to give subsidy. Ershad says if anyone gives agricultural loan for spice production, it has to be 2%. Now this is Ershad. Remember, Ershad finished his presidency by 1991. It was 1996, next government, and finally it was Dr. Atiur Rahman who became the central bank governor. Up to here, remember there's a lot of governor came. Nobody actually understood what to do. So when Dr. Atiur came, he said to the banks that you have to give this loan. And he gave a quota. He said if you're of the 100% of your loan portfolio, certain percentage, I don't know, remember the number, must be agricultural loan. He said you have to give this agricultural loan because I want economy to, because economy is not one sector, because they're all giving loan to trade. Industries are there. So he said you have to give agricultural loan. It's a requirement. Right now, for example, he also introduced that you have to give certain percentage of loan as SME loan. So Atiur created certain interesting access issue that others never thought about it. So he, as an economist, he said, look, agricultural loan must be given. So banks asked him that how can we actually give agricultural loan? One strategy is cost of industrial loan will go up, because if I'm giving industries as 13%, but if you want this 7% to be covered up, I need to raise it maybe 15, 16% because volume is higher. He said, no, that you cannot do. The bank said, obviously, how do we be financing? He said, I will pay. As a governor, I will pay. So he even did not bother with the finance ministers, Dr. Mohit Shaikh. He didn't bother about the finance minister. He said, I, as a governor, will pay you 7% because it was Ershad who created the rule, but the rule was never applied. So he checked on the rule and he understood, okay, very interesting. I can actually keep this money because according to the law, I can give the money. So he asked banks that you have to give this loan. And what you see today? You see significant increase in spice trading in Bangladesh. Radhuni has come a brand, right? Have you seen this? No.
Yes, sir.
You see how supply
Yes,
side you see how the supply side policies also come by the monetary policies. So monetary policies can be designed to change economy. So Dr. Atiu did, and it's a credit to him. Unfortunately, as I said, I'm talking about this because our problem is we don't recognize people who does what. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to make sure that we claim, and my point is that these are the people who contributed. So he actually, because of his policies, this has happened. And when this has happened, government was also finding out difficulties, so they now raised it to 4%. But still the rest, central bank is still paying. Said, look, I will pay for it. And finance minister was not happy with him because he actually did not talk to finance minister probably on this. He decided on his own as a central bank governor. And our finance ministers always believe he's the boss of the central bank. And Dr. Atir was probably one of the bankers, central banker, who said, no, I'm not working with you. I'm also an alternative because there are fiscal policy and monetary policy. He was the first one to declare monetary policy in Bangladesh Bank. So he actually created the first monetary policy. So he actually declared monetary policy and he said, I will control inflation. Now, before him, no central bank governor could actually say that I can control inflation. Now, that does not mean he is to be only credited, but it started, the central bank's quality started with, I think with Farashuddin. So Dr. Farashuddin, you all know him or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so Dr. Farashuddin, when he became the first governor of the central bank, he started looking at the central bank as a monetary policy unit. And he started thinking that central bank has role to play for the economy. Previous to this, central bank was only thinking of controlling banks, like UGC controlling university. Answer is you have to understand the theoretical background of a central bank. Central banks are not designed for controlling. It's a regulatory organization, but that's not his only job. His job is also to use monetary policy to control the economy, to manage the economy. So he started it. And why he could not implement all of them? Because you need time. You need to create instrument to control something. If you want to control your own brother, if your own family members, you need instrument. What is the instrument? They have to depend on you first. Otherwise, if you say something, it will not work. Just like us. Whenever we say, I say a lot of things in the class. But if I say the same thing outside the class, nobody will listen, right? So you see, we create an instrument, we said enrollment, come to the register students. Remember all these instruments. So if you're a regulator, you need the instruments to control. So instruments created this. So Farashuddin actually created certain instrument. Now his time was not very long. After that, it was Fakhruddin, right? Remember Dr. Fakhruddin was the governor. He came from the World Bank and he actually improved it. So I would say Dr. Fakhruddin is on the major architect of Bangladesh's current strength of central bank. So Fakhruddin came and he actually built instruments, lot of instruments he created within the central bank to control banks and to manage the economy. After then, it was Salauddin. Salahuddin and Fakhruddin was friends, very good friend, classmates. So Salahuddin followed Fakhruddin, said, whatever you have followed, I will do. So in a way, Salahuddin followed Fakhruddin. And after Fakhruddin, by the time when Atiur Rahman came after that, he understood that I have all the instruments ready to control the economy. So he first declared the monetary policy of Bangladesh and said, I'm going to control the economy. So the central bank started moving into this. Remember, now inflation control became a running of an economy. And now the EU, and as a finance minister and a finance minister and the central bank governor, you realize that we together, we have ability to control the economy. Finance minister should have been happy. Unfortunately, our finance minister was unhappy, which I do not like. Because he should have realized that with a stronger central bank governor, your economic growth is going to become faster and faster. For two reasons. Number one, why you need good central bank governor. The central bank governor controls inflation, and we realize that inflation is organized, not like this. Organized inflation means more people have trust on the ability of the government. So investors will invest in the economy because government has the ability to control. You do not want to drive in a car when you don't know whether the driver has a control of it. You want to ride on a car when the driver in the bus has no control? Answer is no. Nobody wants to ride in a car or bus when driver fails to not have a control. So I need, in order for an investor, I need economy to be controlled by someone who said, I can put a brake. And it is two persons who can put the brake. Number one is the finance minister, and number two is the central bank governor. Both of them should work together, not to fight each other, to control the economy, because they need both. It's like clutch and escalator and brakes. You need all of them together in order to function. Otherwise, you will not be able to. So when Dr. Atiur mentioned the monetary policy, first I remember many people in Bangladesh, many economists, honestly speaking, were against him and said, no, what does it do? We cannot control Bangladesh economy. Monetary policy is not possible. These are all American policies. We can only use fiscal policy. But he was successful. And success sometimes becomes a failure of individuals. I'm giving you all this history to understand how economy moves. But all this created opportunities of investment. So whatever you see today in economy, which is a good economy, very stronger economy, is not because of accident of one person. It was design of a policies. I still waiting for the day when finance minister will realize that I don't want to make a budget as income and expenditure statement. Remember, what finance minister was a budget is income and expenditure statement. What is income and expenditure? Here is my income, here is my expenditure. And I want to make sure that they are close to each other. That's not how you look into the budget. You look into the budget with an idea of investment in the economy, idea of growth in the economy. That I am creating budget so that economy, there will be more investment in Bangladesh. There will be more economic growth. And in that area, I need two policies. One is a fiscal policy. One is a monetary policy. On the fiscal policy, I talked about budget as one document. But there's not only one document. There's also import-export policy. Remember, we have export policies. That's also a fiscal policy. There is an industrial policy of the government of Bangladesh, which is also an fiscal policy. Unfortunately, I always say, and this is something I've been pushing into the mind of the people, and saying, look, Bangladesh is an unfortunate country. We don't have an industry minister. So we have two industry ministers, and I'm saying, honestly speaking, that there is no industry minister in Bangladesh. Not because that you did not know him, but unfortunately, we don't have a minister of industry. Do we have a minister of industry or not?
Yes, we have.
We have. But unfortunately, we don't. Because our Minister of Industry is a Ministry of Public Industry. What is Ministry of Public Industry? Their job is to control jute mill, Their industry is to control sugar mill, Chemical Industries Corporation. So instead of making an industry minister who is active, instead of making industry minister who understand industry, we have created a minister of industry which is dealing with government industries. So I would rather call them Ministry of Public Industries.
Please subscribe to this channel to receive updates on new videos.